With the House approving President Trump's $9 billion rescission package that includes cutting $1.1 billion in federal funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, I sit down with the general managers of KSFR and KUNM public radio stations here in New Mexico to find out exactly what these cuts will mean for them. New Mexico has launched a new automated voter registration system at the Motor Vehicle Division offices, and they've registered nearly 17,000 residents since it took effect on July 1st. APS 6th and 7th grade students identified as underserved under the Yazzie Martinez ruling are now meeting their math proficiency targets. And multiple people were rescued from floodwaters in Rio Doso on Thursday after storms triggered a flash flood warning. From the Albuquerque Journal, this is the leading news. I'm Gino Gutierrez. It's Friday, July 18th, and I'll have more on those stories in a few moments, plus a look at Albuquerque's weather forecast on the other side of this break.
This episode is brought to you by the Kirtland Partnership Committee. For 30 years, we've been dedicated to supporting, growing, and preserving the Kirtland National Security Complex. We work tirelessly to enhance military readiness, foster community partnerships, improve quality of life, and promote economic development right here in New Mexico. Join us in our mission to ensure that Kirtland remains a cornerstone of national security and a key provider of quality jobs and investment for all of Greater Albuquerque. Together, we can make a powerful impact. Kirtland Partnership Committee, proudly shaping the future of our national security for 30 years.
The House has approved President Trump's $9 billion rescission plan, cutting $1.1 billion in federal funding for the Corporation of Public Broadcasting, or CPB, and targeting foreign aid. The narrow 216 to 213 vote marks the first successful presidential rescission request in decades and sends the bill to Trump's desk for signing. While some Republicans expressed discomfort with the cuts, most backed the bill to align with Trump's agenda. The move effectively eliminates CPB funding for the next 2 years, impacting over 1,500 local public TV and radio stations. That includes NPR and PBS affiliates. Lawmakers from rural areas warn that local stations could face severe consequences, especially where public media is the primary source of news and emergency alerts. With this decision now made, public radio and TV stations here in New Mexico will have to grapple with what it means to have this funding cut. To get an idea for what this federal funding cut could mean for two public radio stations, one in Santa Fe and Albuquerque, I sat down with the general managers of KSFR and KUNM. These conversations took place ahead of the final vote, which happened late Thursday evening. We'll start with my conversation with KUNM General Manager Jeff Pope. Jeff, thank you so much for joining me.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, Jeff, I'm curious, obviously the House right now deliberating on if these cuts will come to pass. For KUNM in particular, what kind of federal funding are you guys getting? And if that should be cut, how would that affect the station?
The funding, KUNM receives about 12% of its annual budget from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting in an annual grant called the Community Service Grant, which you have to qualify for every year. In addition, stations like KUNM, who are CSG recipients, Community Service Grants recipients, we also receive the benefit of negotiated music licensing fees, lots of training opportunities, other incentive grants to build out newsrooms or arts and culture features. So that's that 12%. We tend to use that for operational costs and overhead and for programming costs. When I say programming, that is content. So coming out on our digital platforms and on radio. So, we think of ourselves as a media organization, and we have radio and audio and broadcast, and then we also have digital platforms that we put out our content on every week.
And Jeff, public radio stations are often lifelines, especially for individuals who live in rural areas that may not have access to news outlets or even the internet in some cases. But I was hoping you could help our listeners understand a little bit more who exactly your guys' audience are and the areas that KUNM covers.
Like the Journal, we serve a really large area. We think of ourselves as serving most of northern New Mexico. So obviously the Albuquerque and the Bowl and the metro area, but all the way up to Taos and the state line, out into the Sangre de Cristos and out across the Sandia Crest. So really out onto the Navajo Nation, serving many pueblos up the Rio Grande as well, and out west to Mount Taylor and beyond. So it's a pretty big area that we serve, about 1 million people are inside our broadcast area. And we have a little over 80,000 listeners. And then we have also digital viewers as well, and readers and listeners on top of that.
So Jeff, obviously a really large audience that you guys are serving. You mentioned 1 million people. Let's say I'm a KUNM listener. If these funding cuts come to pass, what exactly can I expect to change in programming and what I hear on the radio on a daily basis?
I love this question, and the kind of impacts that one might see are that for us, 12% is a big chunk. So what we typically do with that 12% is leverage other funding. So we might see other funders less willing to be part of the public-private partnership, which could lead to bigger losses inside the station and sort of erode that. It's a wonky answer, but it's this cascading piece. And so, yeah, you could look at programming changes, meaning on the national level. We could have less support to support our, we have 100 volunteers who produce programs here at this organization, along with a professional staff of 25. We could possibly have to look at cuts in staffing, although we're really down to the bare bone here at KUNM. So very efficient organization as we run it. I think to zoom it out more broadly, you also might see some really creative thinking where stations start banding together to say, hey, are there services that cost each of us a lot that we could band together and get a similar service for less cost? That's possible too. I would say, and what I've said in other interviews, Gino's, is the impact of this funding is we're 10 weeks away, right, from having to make these kind of decisions and really think this way. So one of the things I think people want to understand is this, it could impact them by what they might get in their daily product, but also the rush to do this in the next fiscal year really creates a cramp in any business's style. Like nobody pivots in 9 weeks to try to replace 12% of your budget, right? So it just really, that's a really big impact internally that I wish Congress could really understand. Is like, with more time, we can make better decisions.
So Jeff, I'm curious, do you guys have a plan on how you would replace this funding, or is there an idea in place if it does get cut?
We're launching a plan. We've launched a plan already to get going, and this has been months in the offing to engage our audience, to grow that audience, and to really create the content that people value and can add a little extra or become a first-time donor or supporter for the organization. We're also working with the philanthropy community inside and outside of New Mexico, which is a big piece, an important chunk of our budget. We're a nonprofit organization operating on the university campus. And so that planning began months ago, and we're going to start seeing that now ramp up. Whether or not the funding is rescinded, the real vision here is Congress is going to do what it's going to do. We're running an organization where listeners and readers have expectations every single day. And so what we want to do is free ourselves from the vicissitudes of what Congress may or may not do. And if we keep that funding, which is critical to what we're doing today and every day, awesome. We will make sure that that's there for a rainy day fund, and we will grow, even as a small station serving a lot of rural areas, we'll grow our capacity to make it through these rainy day, these periods where we don't have that rainy day fund.
So a lot still hanging in the balance here, Jeff, as the House still debates this issue, and obviously implications for KUNM and public radio stations across the country. Thank you so much for making some time and discussing this issue with me.
Happy to be on today. Thanks so much.
Now my conversation with KSFR General Manager Tasba McCullough. Tasba, thank you so much for joining me. Can you tell us a little bit about KSFR and the audience you guys serve?
KSFR is licensed to Santa Fe Community College and has been licensed to the college for since 1991. And we serve primarily the northern New Mexico region, the 8 or 9 counties that are up here. But of course, we serve a larger area via the internet capabilities that we have. And we play a big part in the public getting their information. We've had some on-site hourly newscasts in the past. When the fires were occurring around Pajarito area, we had a reporter stationed out there day in and day out giving hourly update on that fire report. During the most recent fires, we were actually, through one of our reporters, collaborating with National Public Radio, and we were their local go-to station for some of the fires that were happening closer to the Santa Fe area. We do hourly local newscasts, and we also distribute news through the BBC News and other special syndicated programs that our audience appreciates.
I was hoping you could share with our listeners a little bit of how these federal funding cuts could affect your station.
The Corporation for Public Broadcast issues that have come to the forefront, particularly in the past few months, has been about the public broadcasting system and the National Public Radio, who both are recipients of Corporation for Public Broadcasting monies. However, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting also funds many other projects, such as they provide funding for community service grants, of which KSFR is a recipient. We are not an NPR station. We don't air NPR content. However, the funding that we get through the community service grant, we use the monies there, which are, some of them are restricted, so we can only spend that money in certain areas. And so we've chosen to spend the money to pay for the digital service fees that allow us to distribute our programming via the internet. And we also pay for a couple of syndicated programs. We also pay for American Public Media programs, that's the BBC News, and other special programs that they offer through their service to us. We also utilize Democracy Now! We pay for Democracy Now!, which is a program that our listeners would miss if we did not have the money to pay for them. So we use also that money for some operational costs, and none of it goes to staffing. And so that's where we would lose out. We would have to find that money someplace else. And finding that money someplace else, being a small rural station in an economic area that isn't as bountiful, let's say, as the stations who reside in big cities around the country, we don't have that leeway in funding. So we would be affected about $150,000 less in our operational costs and lose some programming, perhaps.
So now both of these stations and their general managers will now have to navigate the reality of their federal funding being cut. My thanks to Jeff Pope from KUNM and Tasma McCullough from KSFR for sitting down and speaking with me. In other headlines from the newsroom, New Mexico has launched a new automated voter registration system at Motor Vehicle Division or MVD offices, registering nearly 17,000 residents or updating their voter info since it took effect on July 1st. The system, part of the 2023 Democratic-backed election law, automatically registers eligible voters during MVD transactions unless they later opt out by returning a mailed notice. State officials say it improves speed and accuracy and also the security of voter registration while screening out ineligible individuals such as non-citizens or minors. However, Republican lawmakers have raised concerns about potential voter fraud and a lack of trust in election oversight. New Mexico joins 8 other states using similar post-transaction opt-out systems, and the change comes ahead of a pivotal 2026 election cycle with major state and federal offices on the ballot. Albuquerque Public Schools 6th and 7th grade teachers identified as underserved in the Yazzie Martinez ruling are meeting their math proficiency targets, according to new data presented to the school board. While 6th graders hit 20.4% proficiency above their 19.6% target, 7th graders reached 16.6%, exceeding their 16% goal. Both groups also showed a slight decline from last year's performance. These students include English learners, economically disadvantaged students, Native American students, and those with disabilities, as well as Black students under APS monitoring. The board celebrated the progress, saying it shows APS is on track towards its long-term goal of raising 8th grade Yazzie Martinez students' proficiency to 21.1% by 2028. However, concerns were raised about federal funding cuts, which could affect up to 60 positions critical to sustaining progress. APS says it will retain those roles for the next school year, despite uncertainty over continued federal support. And multiple people were rescued from floodwaters in Ruidoso on Thursday after storms triggered a flash flood warning, with heavy monsoon moisture fueling widespread thunderstorms. The National Guard and swift water teams responded to at least one rescue on foot, while another was reported near Ruidoso Downs. A shelter in place was issued for residents of the Cherokee Mobile Home Park, and debris clearing crews were dispatched. An evacuation shelter was also set up at the Ruidoso Community Center. The area is still recovering from deadly flooding that took place just over a week ago and remains vulnerable, especially around the burn scars. The National Weather Service did warn that rainfall of 1 to 1.5 inches or more than 2 inches per hour pose a significant flash flood risk. More storms are expected on Friday, with similar conditions likely. The leading news is powered by the journalism of the Albuquerque Journal. If you enjoy hearing all of the stories we share with you here daily, please consider becoming a digital subscriber to the Journal by utilizing the discount code in our show notes. Every subscription helps support local journalism and allows us to provide you with the news that matters to you. Now taking a look at Albuquerque's weather forecast, scattered showers and thunderstorms are expected after 3 p.m., mostly sunny with a high near 94. As for this evening, scattered showers and thunderstorms are expected before midnight, then isolated showers between midnight to 3 p.m., mostly cloudy with a low around 69. To keep up with all the latest news from the Albuquerque Journal, you can visit our website at abqjournal.com. That's the leading news. I'm Gino Gutierrez. We'll be back on Monday.